Infernity, the deck that arguably imposed hard once-per turns into card design, and it practically entirely boils down to Infernity Archfiend himself. As a deck in the meta, Infernity had a history of being an amazing deck that gets hit with some of the worst luck when it comes to historic timing ever, such as with its first major romp in the meta with the release of the Shining Darkness to become top dog, only to rapidly lose its position to the first FTK to win Worlds, Frog FTK, which by the time it was handled, Launcher had been put to 1 and the deck's speed into the ground. However, we're not looking at Infernity's inception, but rather its first major resurgence in April 2013 with the release of one particular Exceed that would change everything. Today, we're going to look over the classic deck of Exceed Infernities, how it operates, how it changed over time, and whether or not it holds up in the context of retro formats as they're played today. Today we ask, how good was Exceed Infernity really? Hey guys, really quick. I noticed that only about 20% of you are subscribed, so if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe below. It really does help me out. Infernity, as a deck, held strong to a single major game plan. Empty your hand as fast as possible to combo off using a combination of Archfiend, Necromancer, and Tuners to quickly and effectively recur Archfiend for search power and build up major synchro boards, ending with at least Doom Dragon and a few Infernity barriers to back it up. With the dawning of the Exceed era, however, Infinity's game plan would take a detour away from the Synchro pool, as the Exceed pool allowed them to perform similar lines without the need for tuners, with cards like Diamond Direwolf pulling double duty as Exceeds to get Archfiends back into the graveyard, as well as being able to pop used Exceeds to clear board space. However, this concept, while sound on paper, lacked the consistency and finality of the Synchro variant, and furthermore couldn't operate well in the meta due to the restrictions on Launcher. This all changed with the release of Hidden Arsenal 7 on April 26, 2013, where one particular Exceed would be made available. Lavalval Chain was a generic rank 4 that could, by detaching a material, either send a card from deck to grave, or could stack a monster on top of the deck. This Exceed would solve a lot of the existing issues with Infernity, as now any two level 4s could perform any number of lines to help set up your combos far easier than before, whether it be dumping a combo piece like an Infernity Name or Stygian Street Patrol, or stacking Archfiend to draw into it to trigger its own summon effect. Because of this, Summoner Monk made its way into the deck as a way to access a number of different monsters to help clear up the board state before making a chain, such as Dark Grepher for clearing out clogged monsters, Armageddon Knight for setting up the grave, or even just straight into Infernity Archfiend for hands where you can already clear out everything else. The primary change to the deck's end boards was to leave up at least one copy of Infernity Archfiend to keep your barriers live, which would generally be enough to lock up a board state, as multiple Omni Negates in the time period were extremely difficult to push through with the decks of the time, like Mermail due to the resources required for a push. With its debut at YCS Meadowlands in May 2013, Exceed Infernity would have a decently impressive showing, taking 4 of the top 32. These finishes included a top 16 from Satoshi Kato, a top 32 from Kareem Mahamjik, a top 32 from Patrick Hoban, who opted to not fully cut the Synchro line, and a top 32 from George Cayenne, who opted not to share his list. While many expected Exceed Infernity to grow from its performance here, the issue was that by the next YCS, Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy had released, marking the beginning of what became known as Dragon Ruler format, marked by YCS Toronto 2013, being mostly dominated by the deck, with Infernity able to squeeze in one more top 32 finish before being completely drowned out by the new format king. With the eventual banning of the Baby Rulers and the limiting of the Dragon Rulers, Infernity would see a small resurgence with YCS Atlanta almost a year later in February 2014, taking a single top 32 spot, 2 top 32 spots at Berlin the same month, 2 top 32 spots in Chicago in March, and 2 top 32 spots in Philadelphia the same month. But by the release of Duelist Alliance in August and YCS Toronto in September, Infernity was once again nowhere to be found. The deck's official end is mostly attributed to the October 2014 ban list, where Infernity Archfiend would be placed to a limited status, and any chance of the deck making a comeback absolutely died with the banning of Lavalval Chain in July 2015, although it was banned for Necros' sin rather than Infernity's. While Infernity's timing has always been historically unfortunate, timing doesn't always matter in the case of retro formats, as formats that lasted as short as one weekend can be immortalized with the right amount of player base support. As far as formats where Exceed Infernity is legal, there's actually quite a number of widely supported formats where the deck is possible to play at its historic full power, as 7 of the formats in question take place between the release of Lavalval Chain and the limiting of Archfiend, and that number can be increased to 10 if you don't really mind playing with only one Archfiend, though I wouldn't recommend it. For the sake of this overview, however, we're going to be looking at the formats where XYZ Infernity is a viable option in the current state of the meta, meaning we'll be looking at Meadowlands, Fire, Water, and Hat formats. Starting with the Inception format, Meadowlands is based on the format present at YCS Meadowlands in May 2013, directly following the release of Hidden Arsenal 7 and Lavalval Chain. Meadowlands as a format is by far and away the least explored of the three we're going to talk about here, but it's still better off than most of the lesser played formats, with 3 documented events having taken place long after the events of 2013. Even still, out of the total 67 entrants across 3 tournaments, XYZ Infernity has a total of 5 entries, which while still marking it as the 3rd most popular deck in the format, only sitting behind Mermail and Evil Swarm in terms of popularity, the deck has yet to take a single top cut position at any of these events, placing it behind newer discoveries of the format like Gladiator Fist and the previous staples like Mermail and Evil Swarm. For Fire Water format, a total of 6 recorded events have taken place, and similar to Meadowlands format, Infernity, while showing some of the higher levels of popularity in the format, has yet to perform in the top cut post 2014, holding a total power ranking of 4th in the format behind Fire Fist, Mermail, and Bujin. For the last of these formats, Hat, short for Hand Artifact Trap Tricks, is by far and away the most played of the formats we're going to be talking about today, being arguably the 3rd most popular retro format overall. As such, there are far more recorded tournaments that have taken place with this format over its exploration since 2014, with 36 results recorded via format library. And with these, XYZ Infernity finds its niche, mostly thanks to Soul Charge providing additional procs for your Archfiend pushes, and being able to combo off better from the setups provided by Lavalval Chain. However, even with its higher performance and popularity compared to other decks in Hat, Infernity still isn't regarded as a particularly strong option, having not seen a top in the format since October 2022. It currently sits at 4th in power and popularity rankings behind the format staples of Hat, Geargia, and Mermail, but its combo nature allows it to hold a niche in the control-heavy format. With all of this said, what is the state of XYZ Infernity? The deck itself suffers most from its own unfortunate timing, as right when it was at its peak, Dragon Ruler format came along and stole its thunder. Even in the later formats where it could be considered a viable option again, the nature of more and more powerful releases continuously pushed the deck's performance down until its eventual strike down via the ban list. Even in retro formats, XYZ Infernity struggles to find its footing among its contemporaries to the point where its most viable success lies in a format where it can't perform particularly well due to its one major flaw: inconsistency. I've held off on mentioning it until now, but XYZ Infernity has a strong amount of stigmatism behind it compared to other decks of the time due to the controversy of being piloted by cheaters in its time. As for the deck to function properly, you have to have no cards in hand, which becomes significantly harder if and when you open multiple monsters. Because of this, it is commonly believed that a portion of XYZ Infernity's player base back in 2013 to 14 cheated by setting monsters in their spell and trap zone to sidestep this drawback to the deck, which may explain the more lackluster performance in the retro format scene, as most retro format events are played in online clients where such actions are far harder to perform, if not impossible with some clients. Even with this stigmatism surrounding the deck, XYZ Infernity is an extremely powerful deck under the correct conditions. It's just difficult to control some of those conditions with enough consistency to perform in tournament settings. Overall, I'm giving XYZ Infernity a 4 out of 10, primarily supported by its historic performance over multiple formats, though its retro play has not been able to back it up as strongly. What decks and formats do you want me to cover next? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll use your suggestions for the next installment of this series. Your suggestions can be as popular or as niche of a deck as you want, as I'm sure many of you too enjoy looking back over the deep and rich history of the game. A huge shout out to my Dark Law level patrons, Chaotic Meatball, Otaku GamerX, Prinrin, and Ryza339, as well as all of my other patrons over on patreon.com. If you'd like to support the channel and watch my videos a day early, please consider supporting me on Patreon, where support tiers start at as little as $1 a month. Link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, leave a like and comment below, and consider subscribing to the channel. Every little bit helps out more than you know. We're actually getting really close to 20,000 subscribers, so help push us over that milestone. If you want more info on the behind the scenes for these, be sure to follow me on Twitter, check out my Twitch streams whenever they happen, and join my Discord server. Links for all of those in the description below. Thank you all again, and I'll see you next time.